How's it going everybody? So I'm making this video today about scaling recipes for breweries, different sizes and such. I've had a lot of questions lately about how that works, so I just wanted to make a kind of a video to illustrate all that for you. So it's one of those loaded questions sort of things again. So if a brewery is typically a 10 to 15 barrel brewery and they wanted to do a pilot batch first to see how things are going, they might do a 5 or 15 gallon recipe. They might even be of a nature to just go ahead and do the whole thing in their 10, 15 barrel system and just go for it. In that sort of size of a scale, they can afford to do so, and then just kind of hope the beer turns out good. Of course, with good sanitization practices and such. That's kind of what you can do is that smaller pivotal brewery still. Now, your 60 barrel, 120 barrel type of breweries and such and higher, they typically do this on a 1 to even 10 barrel scale recipe pilot. So, for instance, Bell's in Kalamazoo in Comstock, Michigan, and they're in their Eccentrics Cafe location, which is their original brew pub and stuff. They have, I believe, it's like a 8 or 10 barrel system, and that system feeds the brew pub, but also serves as their pilot workhouse, and they can kind of figure out what's the next big recipe, work on different scaling items. But now here's where it gets tricky. So a lot of people already knew that, where they do a test batch at a smaller level and then they grow it. But here's where the nuances become a little more tricky for scaling up that recipe. Now, first of all, let's say for even easy number's sake, most homebrew batches are 5 gallons. So I typically hop anywhere between 4 and like 10 ounces, depends on the beer. Even 1 ounce to 10 ounces or so in that range. But let's say I'm all my IPAs are 6 ounces per 5 gallons. Well, per 5 gallons. If I'm scaling up to a 1 barrel, 5 barrel, 10 barrel, 20, 50 barrel, whatever, it doesn't mean that same ratio grows with the recipe. It actually has some of a curve to it. You're actually using less hops per barrel once it goes higher. It just has a better utilization rate in those systems. That's in your vertical fermenters. If you ever read the book Barrel Aged Stout Selling Out, when they went and grew to the Budweiser's horizontal systems, they had a heck of a time trying to catch up to those recipes. That's a different story, but for vertical sake, which is a lot more craft brewery usage, including Bell's, Founders, and stuff like that, and those larger, real big systems, they're using horizontal systems, or fermenters. Now, that's just an example in the hops, though, where as you grow in size, you are just using sort of there's software that can figure that out for you, by the way. So it's not, I'm not going to do the math on that today. I never want to, because the software is there for that purpose. Just understand that basically as you grow, you're actually going to use less per barrel. But here's I think the bigger trickers part is, speaking of hops, they're measured obviously in alpha acids. Now, for those that don't brew, that basically tells me where my IBUs are going to land on the recipe, and how hoppy it's going to be, and then I need to adjust it as such. So, for instance, if 1 year a crop of Amarillo is like 14.3% 1 year, but the next year it is 13.1 or something. I have to adjust that recipe to match that, or I should just expect a happier, more bitter beer. Now, that's also something the software can do for you. You can adjust that as such. But where it gets really tricky, especially in the bigger breweries, is that calculation as well. But also the crops for grains change every year too. So you're using human century sort of methods to see where that malt is going to land, where you might have to adjust that recipe a little bit. On a larger system, especially in general, but also year to year. So you always hear people say, "Well, they changed the recipe. This year's batch is horrible." Da, 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 da. Well, that's based on the crop year, balancing out the malt and the hops and stuff. Generally, all the yeast companies I use have good practices to have that all be the same, basically. So that's also great news that that is just going to be the same. As a home brewer on a well and septic system sort of thing, my water could always be variable as well. So I actually just use RO water now, and I just use brewing cells to kind of adjust as needed. But that's kind of the easy way out, because in a well system, your water is always going to be changing. So, but back to the other part. So there's a lot of nuances involved. So keep that in mind. So that's, I'm kind of sticking up for the brewers here, I guess, when I say, this year's batch of this versus last year might be different. It's kind of the beauty of craft beer. They want to go consistent for sure. It tastes like the same beer in most cases. When it's slightly different, though, you got to remember sometimes the hops are just going to be a little different from year to year. I remember it was, the 2014 crop year, I think. There was an issue, I believe, for some of the regions that typically grow hops, but also I think the rumor was Heineken had changed the recipe and bought a lot more Cascade or something, I think it was. So sometimes brewers have to kind of adjust on the fly right with that too and adjust the recipes. So that's kind of the nuances with a growing size of a batch of beer from 5 gallon and 1 barrel pilot system to growing it bigger. But that's kind of what I want to make this video, is kind of cover those bases of how that all works. It's kind of a loaded question, like I said, but I hope that is helpful to kind of help figure out where those how those brewers do that sort of growth, how they get there. So basically, software and really watching the crop year and the differences between the hop alpha acids, and of course the malt could always be a little bit variable as well, with the diastatic power as well. So anyway, look forward to some more videos here shortly. I'm definitely going to have one on diastatic power here soon. I think that's kind of a big growing term right now in the homebrew world. A lot of people are kind of throwing it out in the wrong way. So I want to make sure I put it out there in the right way for you. So I want to get those notes a little less on the fly for you, so it's a cleaner video. But thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and cheers.